We are organizing this session because we all have seen an explosion in the number of high-tech and value-added businesses, particularly in the digital economy, and they are creating new products and services that are sold online while transforming traditional industries, and e-commerce is therefore growing at an even faster speed, and at the same time we also see that this also creates new challenges. The companies still face barriers in Europe, and this session is dedicated to the role of the EU single market in the digital economy. And the main aim is to discuss the barriers that businesses still face when working in the EU, and what should the policymakers focus on to prevent and remove such barriers. Our discussion paper that you have all seen, most probably, the digital economy, outlines 4 main action areas, and those are the following. It's tackling regulatory fragmentation, it's removing territorial restrictions, it's also the ensuring fair and open access, and finally ensuring connectivity. But it will be more than interesting to hear out other main priorities to complete the digital single market, and how can the EU contribute to an open environment for businesses and a safe environment for consumers. I will be chairing and moderating this working session, and it will be organized in a way so that we can have an open dialogue among all those dealing responsible and benefiting from a single digital space in Europe. Our keynote speakers in the panel of the working session today comprises different representatives from my colleagues in various member states to the Secretary General of a major non-governmental organization, and from the heads of successful innovative businesses to the chair of the Internal Market and Consumer Protection Committee in the Parliament. And I will introduce all of you while we go on with our discussions. We have quite a lot of speakers today in today's session, so I would be happy if the speakers would be concise, 3 to 5 minutes, and most possibly also to reflect to the colleagues and to the ideas that we've heard before, possibly not repeating, because we had to finish sharply at 6:30 to be ready for the evening dinner. But before giving the floor to the keynote speakers, I'd like to invite Commissioner Biankowska to launch this discussion with your ideas. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I will be rather short because we've had Vice President Ansip and Vicky Ford touching upon the issues of digital single market. I welcome the presidency discussion paper. It sets the scene well. We are, of course, getting closer to the adoption of the digital single market strategy, but it's still too early to give detailed information on its content. Especially, I have to tell you that my services are responsible for cross-border e-commerce, for cross-border parcel delivery, and for the digitalization of the industry, so the standards and big data and big data. So I will just, as an initial speech, limit myself to 3 simple points. First, we all agree on the core issues. You all know that potential gains for consumers and the EU economy. The presidency paper picks the right core issues we need to tackle. Second, the difficult part just now begins. We need to find practical solutions to all of the problems that were touched upon before. Of course, I have worked with Vice President Ansip, with Commissioner Oettinger on developing these solutions, but there is a difficulty designing solutions that work for everyone. I was also talking about this on this single market forum this morning. Solutions which, for example, balance ensuring that consumers are fully protected, but give consumers the right to buy, or allow businesses the freedom to innovate, but also have common standards. We will come with a very concrete and strong solutions in May. But we will all need to be realistic, and I think that it has to be said that none of you will like all of them, but I deeply believe that all of you will like most of them, most of our proposals. We will hear delight and probably complaints from some stakeholders. And a third point is the most important for me. Our digital strategy is not the only part of the story for a digital economy, but this is only one element. We have to talk about wider economy, because digital single market is a part of single market. Just currently, just in the time that we are living, it's very important, but still it's a part of single market. Digital startups face similar difficulties in selling cross-border to more traditional companies. Access to finance, taxes, company registration, unnecessary costs and procedures. We need to address these for all our companies working online and offline. In the digital strategy, we will set out some solutions specific for digital, but in other Commission strategies, we will set out others for companies more widely. We have already looked at access to finance in our Capital Markets Union, which will be finalized by July probably. We already have good proposals on the table on a simplified European company regime. Later this year, in November, we are planning to issue our internal market strategy paper. In the end, it does not matter where we cover the issue. It matters that we cover the issue and that we got agreement to the benefits of our companies and of our consumers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. And now I'd like to pass over to our keynote speakers. And let us start with the Finland's Minister, Jan Vapaavuori. Mr. Vapaavuori, when looking at Finland's entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial environment, it seems that you have a very strong ecosystem for the startups and ICT companies, especially young and new ICT companies, are a vital part of your economy, your future economy. What barriers do you and your businesses see, and what can you offer as the possible solutions to remove them, and what structural changes to the economy is needed, and how the EU should contribute to the making the DSM work?
Now it's working. Yeah. Thank you, Madam Presidency, and thank you for your kind words. There were quite a lot of questions, but I tried to answer some of them. Digitalization means industrial revolution. It changes the world faster than any other phenomenon since the beginning of the industrialization. It modifies business models, value chains, and networks. Everything that can be digitalized will be digitalized. Digitalization means, of course, great opportunities for businesses and public sector. However, as the digital environment per se is global, this also means that the competition will get tougher and new successful innovation can happen anywhere. The environment is not only digital by default, it's global by default. And digitalization is accelerating. The logic of the platform economy is winner takes it all. And if you lose the moment, it definitely is gone. The digital success stories so far have come from the other side of the Atlantic, and in future more and more from Asia. The clock is ticking for Europe if we want to keep up with the digital development. Europe has to learn to live with creative distraction and make most of it in order to succeed in the future as well. I think we need to understand digitalization in its broader sense. Digitalization and ICT is not a separate sector of the economy, but rather a new way of doing things, a cross-cutting approach that will be applied in any imaginable sector of the society. Digitalization challenges the current sectoral thinking, and we have to make sure that the old sectoral way does not distort or slow down the development of new business models. It has been estimated that in a couple of years, more than half of all new value creation will be closely linked to digitalization, whatever the sector is. Open data is the new oil. Therefore, we need to make sure that European industries are part of this evolution and can benefit the opportunities it offers. What does this all mean for European policymakers? Our task is to get the European framework right. Therefore, we need a concrete, ambitious and cross-cutting strategy for digital single market. The Commission outlined yesterday in its discussions the future strategy on DSM. I think we can agree on the issues to tackle. Our policies in all sectors should be compatible with the digital environment. This means regulation, smart regulation and deregulation, but also other means such as innovation and financing. The starting point of new regulation should be creating ideal conditions for making the most of new technology and new business concepts. Harmonization should support this goal. However, the means for completing the digital single market don't always need to be regulatory ones. On the contrary, I believe there is a greater risk for over-regulation than lack of regulation. Regulation is by its very nature lagging behind the development, and this applies especially for slow processes of European lawmaking. We should be confident enough to give the markets sufficient degree of freedom to find the best ways to correct problems if they arise. If problems cannot be corrected and regulation is required, technology neutrality and open source should be the starting point. It's not the legislator's task to pick up the winning technologies or excluding innovative products a priori. In keeping with this, I would also like to endorse that the digital test would be part of the competitiveness proofing exercise in cases where European legislation is deemed unavailable. Moreover, Europe should not be closing doors from our global competitors. Protectionist measures only harm businesses. We should rather commit ourselves to making Europe an ideal location for companies to innovate and experiment, to invest and reach for global success. I'd like to see the new fund for strategic investment to reflect this goal. At the same time, we should be requesting reciprocity. Opening doors means also requesting a level playing field for European industries outside Europe. Think digital first should be the way we cheer. But whatever the slogan, the principle is the most relevant thing to keep in mind whenever EU considers new regulation or other political large-scale measures. If Europe wants to become the leading digital economy, we need unified approach by the member states, even though that it inevitably requires compromises and maybe changes in long-standing policies. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. Everything that can be digitalized will be digitalized. That's the challenge. You're right. And I like your point that no over-regulation would be necessary. The market is at some point also self-sufficient and would correct the mistakes, and the regulation should be only at those points when some corrections have to be made. But now I'd like to invite Arnaldo Abruzzini, the Secretary General of Eurochambers, to share his thoughts. The Eurochambers is one of the leading non-governmental organizations in Europe, comprising up to 20 million businesses. I think you have a lot of experience of hearing out and actually dealing with barriers that European businesses face. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much to have had the idea to invite us to address this audience. Actually, it's an honor, but also it's a big responsibility, because I will try to be very blunt, if you allow me. And I would just taking the start from you have said on the point that sometimes the market adjusts mistakes that are on the ground. And therefore, the regulatory perspective should be just to adjust what the market cannot adjust. Now, I think that this is so good in theory, but in practice, I'm afraid that we do not see working that way. We do see that our political leadership in the 28 member states has a perspective on the regulatory framework which is not leaving the market adjusting itself, but it is rather, let me intervene because I want to preserve a certain amount of privilege or protect a certain amount of interest. And I will give some examples to this. The idea of the European Union, the single market in the European Union, is a market with no borders. Our experience as individual member states, it is an experience of creating borders. We have been creating borders, if you are keen on history, since 2000 years. Before my ancestor, and everybody knows that I'm from Italy, the Roman Empire has created the administrative borders. There were no administrative borders before. And since then, we had made wars and battles and fights to create our own borders. What is a border? A border is a line. And whenever you trace a line, you create a difference. Those that are in and those that are out. If you create a threshold, those that are below and those that are above. So borders create differences. We have been masters in Europe in creating differences among our member states. Then all of a sudden, roughly 60 years ago, the founding fathers have decided, you know guys, maybe decreasing the impact of borders will be better for everyone. And that is Europe. So what the final sentence that you have said, that we should probably understand that being equally responsible and having an equal approach in all member states will facilitate our life. It is ultimately the vision of Europe. But that requires compromises. And I'm afraid I do not see those compromises coming. Look what has happened with the VAT regulation on online selling. We do have now, instead of a simplified approach for the business community and especially for the small business trading online, we have a complex and incomprehensible system where you do not know to whom you sell, at what price, and what is the amount of money that you will receive for the selling of that product. Now, this is not a Europe without borders. This is a complex system of protecting certain interests, but in the wrong way. A second example is e-government. Well, I'm very happy to listen all of you from the government of the European Union discussing how important is the digital environment for all of us. But I would really require a major effort to come up to a decent level of e-government business services in each and every individual member states, which is not the case today. A third point, and I conclude, to have those services. There has been an initiative years ago in an environment, the internal market for services, to come up with a directive on the service environment, the service directive. Now that service directive was hinting to a specific point, which is the point of single contact. Do you know what is the point of single contact? I assume yes, you do. But the point of single contact that should facilitate businesses trading cross-border in our internal market, unfortunately enough, it doesn't deliver after 5 years of the deadline for the implementation of the point of single contact any good results. Now, this is against our vision of Europe. Now, I can't understand why we are still discussing about these things years after the deadline. And we as Eurochambers, we have decided to go for an exercise, just to give you some data, arguments. We go for a mystery shopper in every of the 28 member states to test if it is true that this point of single contact do not deliver what has been promised they should deliver. We need to combine our actions with our vision. It is useless to talk about a single market where a small business in one of our member states cannot fill it. Thank you.
Thank you. You see how important it is to invite also the representatives from the business side when the politicians talk. Otherwise, the politicians sometimes, you know, say, I compare it from time to time with looking into the mirror, get self-satisfied, understanding each other, how important the policies are, but sometimes forget that the action is needed as well. And the business is the one that really remind us of that. Now I'd like to turn to our dear friends from the West. We have the Minister for Intellectual Property of the United Kingdom, dear Baroness Neville Roth, here with us. And Baroness, UK has clearly identified digital entrepreneurship and the ICT sector as key for future growth, and the private sector in your country seems particularly active. Creating and implementing innovative and impactful initiatives, and you as the politician have been very active and being their voice in different formats, so we'd be happy to hear you today as well.
Madam Chairman, thank you, and thank you to the Presidency for their very stimulating paper and to the Commission for their comments on one of the major issues facing the EU today. We've been very impressed by the prominence that has been given to the digital single market, particularly through the engagement of stakeholders rightly involved today and the developments of the evidence base. We were asked about our priorities, and I can be clear about this. Consumers want to do more and more online as easily as possible. Firms want to establish themselves, grow and sell across our whole marketplace. Our priority is to enable consumers and businesses to take advantage of these opportunities. The digital revolution has challenged established business models and well-worn regulatory frameworks. Not only are purely digital businesses becoming more and more important to the economy, but digital tools and processes are radically transforming traditional manufacturing and services. And online and offline offers are converging. And as Jan said, we must not slow down this process if we are to remain competitive. We see this in the Internet of Things, one of the most exciting developments on our horizon, which the UK is stimulating through new investment in demonstrator programs, business incubator space, and a research hub. And we see this here in Latvia, if I may say so, where advanced technology is powering the use of traditional materials in new ways. Amber, one of my favorite dual uses, used here for thousands of years, is now being employed in the textile industry to make fashion garments and is even being used in the manufacture of medical equipment. Digital has disrupted our way of doing things, and it will continue to disrupt them, but we have a choice to make. We can respond in fear, or we can respond in hope. A response of fear would see us seek to regulate aggressively, to penalise innovation, to protect incumbents from new challenges. And it would see us ignore opportunities to harness the digital single market, to create consumer choice, jobs and growth. We see this on platforms, where fear of market dominance could lead us to regulate impulsively, without clarity on what we want to achieve or the evidence on how we could achieve it. Yes, there are concerns about market abuse, which must be addressed. We'd like to see changes to speed up the Commission's application of the current competition rules, and will welcome a review of whether the existing framework is fit for the digital age. But knee-jerk, quick-fix regulation could calm the way that European startups that we're hoping will challenge the status quo proceed. Before we rush to regulate, we need to think carefully about what the issues are. Now, the UK's Competition and Markets Authority is undertaking interesting work, examining online reviews and endorsements and the commercial use of consumer data. It's important that we consider all the evidence available and think through different options, including alternatives to regulation. I believe traditional top-down regulation will not allow us to keep pace with the digital revolution. Instead of introducing one-size-fits-all, which would stifle innovation out of fear, we must respond with hope. In the UK, digital growth is driven by tens of thousands of exciting tech businesses, as the President was saying. The vast majority of them are small. They are situated in digital clusters across the country, specialising in particular sectors, technological capabilities and talent. And these clusters are beginning to exist right across Europe, and I know Riga is a home of a thriving IT sector. Some of the actions needed to support these sectors, such as developing digital skills, work best where they are tailored to the local circumstances and should be left to member states. But where the EU can have the most impact is through making it easier for businesses to scale up, expand and add value to the whole economy. For example, we should ensure that there is a swift, single digital process for every step required to set up a company and operate online, as the Commissioner said. And once a company has gone through that process in one member state, it should be valid across the EU. Hope is also about empowering the consumer and giving them greater choice and confidence. We must bring our consumer rights framework up to date, ensure we can handle questions over digital content quickly and fairly. We must also benefit consumers by championing data portability. This would help create more innovative and competitive markets, supporting challenger businesses and putting power into the hands of consumers. We see this choice between a response of fear and a response of hope on copyright, where the fear of harming our creative industries could lead us to ignore new opportunities. I'm passionate about supporting and developing our creative sector. Europe's creative output is one of its biggest assets. We must continue to ensure our creative industries thrive, and that's entirely consistent with embracing the need to update our framework for copyright for a digital age. It doesn't mean we should introduce a single copyright title, but we need targeted reform. We want to see a digital single market where there is greater availability of legitimate content on fair and reasonable terms, where consumers can access their digital downloads and streaming services when visiting a member state. And this in turn will reduce incentives for copyright piracy. My response to the single market is one of hope, of optimism. We can find a way of protecting consumers and ensuring a level playing field without shutting the door to new approaches that give benefits to consumers. We need to think, what can we achieve? What do we want to stop? Only in this way will businesses grow. So let me suggest 3 final things. First, make life easier for business. We need a regulatory framework that protects our citizens and enables our digital business to thrive. We must apply better regulation principles at national and European level. As suggested in the presidency paper, all European legislation should be subject to a digital test to check that it's suitable for today's digital economy. We must make clear, accessible information about how to set up and do business across Europe, and we should make our required procedures for business as simple as possible so that they can be completed online. Second, create the right incentives. We must ensure that investment in intellectual property is rewarded. This includes making sure we can take action to enforce copyright rules so that creators are paid for their work. The only way we will ever agree a package on copyright is if we can demonstrate that it works for consumers and the creative industries. And finally, engage. We need to be humble enough to recognise we as policymakers do not fully understand the technological information, and we can't predict future directions. So we need to listen to the new entrepreneurs and the mature businesses to citizens and to consumers, and together design the legislative and non-legislative framework that the digital single market needs to flourish.
Thank you, Minister. Smart regulation, incentives, and engagement, the key words. And what I also heard, it's a great challenge to find the balance between the business interests and the consumers' interests. That's another aspect very important in this new digital market era. Colleagues, the main beneficiaries or the sufferers are the business, and they are the ones that create the added value to our economy, and that is why we as the politicians should really listen to them. And we have invited several representatives here today as well. Now I'd like to give the floor to Normons Bergs, who is the CEO of a company called Saftechnica, one of strong companies providing the broadband connectivity and mobile communication products worldwide, working not only in the EU, not only in Europe, but in approximately 100 markets in the whole world. So, Normons, the floor is yours. You're here. Yeah.
It's working. Thank you. Yeah, I will try to stick with some slides as well. Thank you for opportunity to share my understanding of what should be done to make life for business easier. On the slide you see some policy wording. I will not read it. I will not read it. I assume that you can do that yourself. I will just show you how I see it. When I sent that presentation to the office, they called me back and said, "Hey, look, your slide number 3 is corrupt. We will delete it." Okay? I said, "No. This is most important slide in the whole presentation." And what you see is Enigma code. So to decode it, you need two things. You need an Enigma machine, and more importantly, you need the right code to put that into Enigma machine, and only then you can get a true meaning of that wording. So I'm not smart enough or brave enough to decode it and to discuss about that that policy statement. Let me tell you about some small hobby project we have done here in Latvia and see is that reflecting somehow to the digital market in the Europe. EU countries provide abundant subsidies to its citizens, so it's even in Latvia. So we have been on pretty healthy diet from 2008, I think. So we don't have very much resources to spend, but nevertheless we are paying also millions and millions of euros to different sorts of subsidies, being that school buses or public transportation, being that food to school kids and students, being that different medical products, etc., etc. How to administer that, how to account that in a fair and effective manner. I truly believe that around that whole, you, Mr. Ministers and Mrs. Ministers, you know that there are probably hundreds of different state-level databases and systems how to do that job. It's expensive and it's cannot be done cross-border. What we have done, we changed the approach that generally, in most of the cases, you pay grants to the service providers who do that. If you subsidize public transport, you pay the transportation company's bills in most of the cases. Or if that is canteen, you pay the canteen's bills. because just giving away money to each and every citizen, it's extremely difficult. We say that with the development of technology, it's now possible to give really money to each and every recipient at the moment when he or she does the transaction. So we did, in fact, it's calculation module, which sits into a standard banking credit card data stream, which does the calculation of the right amount of subsidy at the moment when that customer is buying the goods, which is done in the way of contactless credit card. We did a pilot project in Jelgava, which is 65,000 inhabitants, started from 2012. We issued 15,000 credit cards, which is about 25% of population. We did it within a week. It took a bit of effort, but we did it quite efficiently. And the services are public transport for school children and pensioners, and also food in the schools and canteens. So what we get in second month was that City Hall noticed that they are spending 30% less of social budget funds, and transport company gets by 10% more in ticket income. Why? Because all the subsidy management was paper-based. And I'm not talking that there are a lot of theft in the system. Of course, that part exists as well, and misuse of funds. But at the general system itself was extremely inefficient. And why that system works? Because it uses existing infrastructure. It's banks, credit card payments. It's funded through card transaction fees, so there is no government money. There is no subsidies from outside. And it also leaves no room for cheating, because the money is paid just at the moment of doing transaction. Right? So there is no place, there is no room to steal, and there are at least 5 pairs of eyes who follow that actual transaction. Government sees that each and every transaction, person sees, bank supervisor sees it. Right? And simple thing, there is no barriers to that. Banking system is global one, right? All procedures are in the place in each and every member state around the world, actually. So we pilot in Latvia and copy-paste worldwide. It's just easy as that. Thank you, and I understand that there is no room for questions at this stage, but I would be more than happy to clarify and answer questions if any. Thank you.
What do you, as the business person, see? Is the regulation strong enough, or it should?
I would say less is more. Really, I'm advocate of simplicity. Simple things work. Look, you can see this is by far the best remote control I have seen. Right? This is to do your slides. So it has a green button which says next, red which says back, and then there is one which says black, and I was told never touch it. You know, I have extreme desire to touch it. So it's again, this is 30% redundant, right? You need, if there is something don't touch, then it's not needed. So I'm very big advocate of simplicity, and of course if we talk about the barriers, so in Europe there is one extremely big natural barrier. And this is language, right? We each speak in our mother language, and if there is some public funding needed, I would say that the most important thing is to make efficient translation, to make efficient transfer of different online and also offline services available for each and every member country. And apart from that, I don't know. There is a big list. So there is not a wrong word in that discussion paper. It's always right, but it's simply too complex. If you want to go down to the real business, the message should be very simple. The simpler, the better. And also, I would say that we have to put the priorities. We have to isolate a problem and then solve it. Then isolate the next problem and then solve it. Otherwise, we end up with 1,000-pagers, and then it's extremely difficult to move ahead. So, thank you.
Thank you, Normunds. Now, going once again back to the politicians, we here have our dear colleague, Mr. Gustas, the Minister of Lithuania. In accordance with the Digital Economy and Society Index, Lithuania has the highest share of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics graduates in Europe. And you are among the leaders in next generation access deployment, and I'm a little bit jealous of that, being here as a neighboring country. So tell me, Minister, from your point of view, how these advantages and your experience can be transformed in a better development of the digital single market, and what are your conclusions or ideas after you've heard both the ideas of the politicians and also some harsh words from the business side?
Thank you, Mrs. President, for so kind words about our country. It's great for us, of course, and first of all, I'd like to thank for possibility to discuss this very important issue on digital single market in the EU in such wonderful city as Riga. Dear colleagues, I was asked to talk about the role of EU single market in the digital economy. And my immediate thinking was, where do we draw the line between physical and digital? Is this line the same for businesses and consumers at all times? To which extent we need to have this distinction at all? There are the issues I would like to comment on. I would to address two very important aspects. First of all, e-government solutions that can make businesses' life easier. And secondly, framework conditions for our businesses and consumers to operate in the digital environment with mutual trust. First, to start with public procurement. E-procurement is without a doubt an important source of economic growth, especially through increasing competition and better access to public procurement by SMEs. In Lithuania, between 2009 and 2013, the transition to e-procurement increased SMEs' participation in public procurement by 7%, along with a double increase in the value of cross-border procurement. Last year, the value of e-procurement in Lithuania represented nearly 96% of all public procurement. I can also mention another project we are currently working on in Lithuania, namely a common business inspection information system. It will serve as electronic market surveillance and supervision platform for cooperation among businesses and inspection authorities, enabling to share information, submit documents electronically, plan joint inspections. This should increase transparency and mutual trust, as well as save businesses more than €2 million per year in their time. Since the end of 2014, Baltic states have the possibility to use each country's EID jointly for electronic signing. We already have example of this working on the ground. Latvian company submitted documents for participation in public procurement in Lithuania using its own Latvian certificate. What I want to point out here is that digital solutions, I think each and every country has many of similar examples, is a key tool in assisting businesses to do what they do best in a more efficient way. Now on framework conditions. Digital economy should not be seen as a separate sector itself, rather as an enabler of business growth and greater consumer satisfaction in all sectors of the economy. Where is the line between digital single market and the ordinary or physical single market? Let me give you a few examples. Issues related to parcel delivery, longer delivery time, difficulties with returning or replacing products, not delivery of the products at all, are the main concerns consumers have about buying online cross borders. Does this have a major impact for underperformance of e-commerce? Yes, it does. Is this a digital problem? No. Similar examples can be found in the area of product and service certification, national standards, and others. There are just a few examples of how barriers in the physical single market can directly influence digital economy. And these barriers that we fail to eliminate may also be one of the reasons why the so-called disruptive business models such as Uber or Airbnb emerge. Maybe they are solutions, not the threat. It's a question. So, return to my question raised in the beginning of the presentation. What do we need to do to improve framework conditions for our businesses to operate in the digital environment? I agree we should not place our main focus on regulation digital single market as a specific sector. Let's treat it as normal business environment, the one that need to be managed but is also open to new opportunities and where the game changers are labeled as creative, not disruptive business models. Thank you for attention.
Thank you, Minister. You, the same as Baroness, outlined that there should not be the distinction between the ordinary single market and the digital single market. They are overlapping and very strongly interlinked. We understand, and we also discussed today, and we heard that the fair and non-discriminatory treatment should be in place. And the question was raised: how can 28 different sets of rules can be fair to the companies? And I'd like to now invite Mr. Juris Gulbis, who is the CEO of Lat Telecom, the internationally working telecommunications company that has actually connected people here in Latvia. If we very well know the former slogan of connecting people by Nokia, I'd say that Lat Telecom is connecting people here in Latvia. Thanks to the infrastructure they have built, we have one of the fastest internet in the world. So we have a very good platform to develop the businesses, the services online here. And I think it would be very valuable to hear his opinion on what the barriers he, from his experience, sees for the businesses to do the business internationally across the EU borders. The floor is yours, Juris.
Thank you, Mrs. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great honor for me to present Lat Telecom and our view on developments of digital economy and regulation aspects. We are the biggest electronic service provider in Latvia and most loved telecoms brand. as well. Our state-of-the-art fiber network covers 500,000 households, or 60% of population have access to fiber internet with the speeds of up to 1 gigabit per second. We also are market leaders in pay TV and in corporate services and corporate cloud services as well. We have the first Tier 3 data center, which is certified to the highest security standards. Yes, Latvia has a lot of achievements, thanks also to Lattelecom's investment. We have highest share of fixed broadband subscriptions above 100 megabit per second. So there is no need to be ashamed comparing to Lithuania, as it's been mentioned. We are #1 in Europe in this respect. And I understand that this is an exception comparing to other countries. Our other achievements is, maybe you have noticed that there is a lot of Wi-Fi connection points across Riga. So Riga, thanks to our investment, is Wi-Fi capital of Europe, because per number of population and per square kilometer we have the highest penetration of free Wi-Fi points. We are also investing in development of IT skills, specifically for senior citizens. We have taught 30,000 senior citizens IT skills over the period of 4 years. Also, in order to promote e-services in government institutions and municipalities, we have launched an initiative of e-index, where we measured the interaction of municipalities and government services with citizens through electronic means. And in fact, we have found that main reason in low level of electronic in use of e-services is mainly lack of trust in the electronic format. So there is a lot of work to be done, both from business side and from regulators, in order to increase the level of trust. And obviously, the main issue is that since in Latvia already more than 300 electronic services are available to citizens, we have to work on cross-country electronic services. Yes, we have electronic signature, which is recognized in all 3 countries. We can, in all 3 Baltic countries, we can participate in Lithuanian procurement program. We can exchange electronic signatures with Estonia. But obviously, the development of European electronic services would be something which should be to the benefit of the whole Europe. And honestly, here in Latvia, I do not remember when I have transacted my business with government in paper form. It's all more or less electronic already. The next issue is regulation, and there's been a lot of discussion around that. If we look at European telco segment, I think the main reason of failure, let's put it of investment and lagging behind the United States and the Asian continent in respect of next generation connectivity is mainly because of regulation or over-regulation, or as it was called, deregulation. So-called deregulation created a huge number of telco players. If we compare Europe, it's about 1,000 fixed infrastructure operators, 600 mobile. If you look at the United States, it's 4 big players. China, it's 3. So consolidation is something which is important to consider when drawing up legislation. Another issue is equal regulation for all market players. Only incumbent telco players are regulated, but you have to take into account Google's, Facebook's, WhatsApp's, and all other players in the ecosystem. They are nothing else but telecom service providers, as we see at this point. So all these players should be regulated equally, and not only telco sector. Debate about net neutrality is also very important. We are very happy about the Latvian presidency's proposal for net neutrality. I hope it is not going down in some populistic discussions that telcos must provide the same quality of service to the people who are watching cat videos and the same quality of service to our National Defense Force. It's impossible, and I hope it's not the result of political discussion. And another part of which is missing from this discussion is cybersecurity. As we all know that cybersecurity threats are increasing exponentially every year, and people do not feel safe to transact business over the internet if there is no European-wide assurances that there are strong policies that cover cybersecurity issues across the continent. I think this is something which should be added to discussion about digital single market and regulation as such. So this is most of this of my speech, and thank you very much for your attention. I think the most important part when we are talking is about the regulation is to understand the consequences. I like the remark of UK representatives that politicians do not understand IT. So I hope you learn a little bit and understand more the consequences and regulate not from situation which was 20 years ago, but looking forward what is going to happen tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Juris. They say if the equal rights would have been applied to all the players in the field, then 57% of all the companies would be ready to go online and to sell their products. Now they are approximately 10. Yes. So equal treatment is important, and thank you once again for showing with the finger to the politicians. Yeah. But now we come back to the politicians once again, and I'd like to hear Miss Vicky Ford. She's here with us, and she is also the honorary member of a special working group on the digital single market that led to the adoption of a number of parliamentary resolutions and has become a key platform for in-depth discussions on this topic. And based on what you've heard, Ms. Ford, what would be the necessary and planned next steps of the EU policy and framework for the completion of the digital single market?
Thank you very much, and thank you again for bringing us all together, both industry, both innovators and politicians. I'll try not to repeat what I've already said. Two big picture thoughts first. The first one, we need to agree on priorities of where action at a regional, national level is not enough, and where action at the European level can make a real difference. And going hand in hand with that, the need to work with others across the globe where needed, because the digital economy is often a global economy. And a second big picture thought is that any actions we take must be future-proof, must be workable, and mustn't just lock in old technology. Just touching on some of the detailed issues that are topics of debate in and across the Parliament in no particular order. The need to overcome practical barriers such as inadequate electronic payment systems and the lack of availability of reliable, effective cross-border delivery services have been mentioned. On technical standards, as the Commissioner said, more could be done at a European level to ensure that different machines, products, services work together in a seamless way with better coordination of technical standards. On data and knowledge, we must recognise that data and knowledge are the lifeblood of the future economy. So whilst fragmented data protection and copyright regimes do need to be reformed, this also needs to be done in a way that supports consumer choice, encourages innovation, and promotes our diverse and creative content. On geo-blocking, We need to draw with parallels with trade in traditional goods and trade in our traditional markets to find a fair and proportionate way to balance these issues. On tax, yes, there will need to be different taxes for the ways that we trade today, but this needs to be simplified, especially for micro businesses, as the current confusion over new rules is sending a very negative message on our attitude to small businesses in a digital world just at the time when we're trying to encourage them. So we need to make sure that our optimism for the digital economy is reflected in our actions. On e-government solutions, which were mentioned, we need to invest in interoperable cross-border solutions to help businesses to start up activities across the EU and to empower citizens to interact with public services efficiently when they need to, but have interoperability where needed, not just interoperability for the sake of interoperability. So again, focus. An interesting statistic I was given is that 60% of cross-border internet shopping attempts fail because of technical or legal reasons like refusal of non-domestic credit cards. I've had that when I've tried to use my UK credit card in Brussels to buy an iPhone from a platform. It's really annoying. Okay, and it puts the consumer off buying again. So why are there these technical barriers, and why are consumers sometimes charged a significantly higher price just because they reside in one member state than the other? I've spoken about trust, but it's also safety and security. The Parliament's working, I know, with the Council and Commission to try and find the right framework to deal with cyber threats, and I hope that we can do more on market surveillance, as well as consumer protection regimes. These all help build trust. MEPs are particularly concerned about safety of children online. We had an excellent resolution last month looking at the need for action on areas like combating cyber grooming and the need to remove illicit content from the online environment. I've spoken about trust, but maybe 3 last words. Empowerment. Digital technologies are dramatically underexploited in Europe, and that means investing in developing in digital skills, not just for the old, but for the young and the middle-aged as well, improving our digital skills. Enforcement, I think the Commissioner mentioned, even with the best laws in the world, nothing will change unless they're workable and properly enforced. And I heard the call from the other side of the room for simplicity, absolutely, and the call for better information, and especially on those single points of contact that we promised would work, we should look at those. And the third word would be connectivity. There will be no digital single market without access to high-speed broadband and the availability of adequate mobile through spectrum. And this all requires large-scale investments. I heard what the speaker immediately before me said. Yes, we need to listen to the investors, but let's not compromise on the principles of equality. Let's find a deal that balances that equality, that freedom that we treasure so much, as well as having language that works for investors. And as I've said before, the Parliament is committed to doing its part to bringing forward the DSM. These are complex issues with many of my colleagues involved. From my own part, the Internal Markets Committee is responsible for functioning of the single market, so we will try and make sure that our legislation and our implementation functions in practice. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ford. We now have heard all the keynote speakers with their significant and valuable remarks, and now I'd like to give the floor to other speakers and hear your opinions or interventions. So who would like to be the first as the icebreaker from the ministers or other member state delegates? Who is the brave one? Just raise your hand. Nobody?
If I may, I have a simple question. I don't know who is the right person to answer, but digital signature technology is in place for, I think, last 10 years. What on earth is prohibiting to make a single one for the Europe? And we are talking our local Baltic one as a huge achievement. It doesn't fit in my head. Thank you.
Commissioner, do you have the idea what the possible answer would be?
The possible answer is as the same as everywhere else. If we are deciding 40 years on single European patent, and for 3 years there is a discussion in the Council on this. So this is the reason, nothing else.
Belgium.
Thank you, Minister. As no one, someone has to begin, even in the digital world. Let me say some words. First, to say that it's not because I still use a pen and a paper notebook that I am not a fan of digital economy, and it does not mean that I am not interested in digital economy. Someone said that everything is turning digital. I think that it is true. I was 2 days ago at a dinner party, and the communication passed through SMS. So everyone was looking at these digital tools. So it means that digital can reach, can go very far into the social relation. And digital can be also useful because I was told that it exists a website where you type some words and you receive a speech. I did not try to do the speech coming from the administration, but I received something equivalent that I will try to summarize in some words to show up our priorities. I think the keynote speakers were very interested. I think they set the scene very well. It is, I think, very useful to have this mixture of people from the ground and politicians, two apart worlds but joined in the common objectives. And as far as we are concerned, it is important, I think, for us, and I know I speak more formally, the 6 priorities for us into this, the future of the file is obviously to boost digital economy. I don't have to develop. Secondly, to promote the single market for electronic communication and audiovisual services. Third, and that's an important point that has not been mentioned so far, is to promote digital skills and jobs. And if I mention that, it's because I am an example of someone needed to be much more developed and helped into the skills to use and to have access and to use the digital world. Ensuring user safety and cybersecurity has just been mentioned by the representative of LabTecom. It's very important. At least in Belgium, we attach a lot of importance and a priority to develop as much as possible cybersecurity. Stimulate the digital governance by default. I hope it will work. And improving internet governance. I will limit my remark to that so far. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Olivier. Thomas, Czech Republic.
Thank you, Mrs. Minister. Thank for excellent hospitality of your country and this perfect discussion. I would briefly introduce reaction of Czech Republic for 2 questions which were raised for this discussion. The short-term priorities for the Czech Republic are mainly related to helping develop the high-speed broadband infrastructure as a basic precondition to the functional digital single market. In this respect, Czech Republic is preparing a national plan of next-generation network development, as well as system of support from the EU structural investment funds. In medium term, we think the strategy could concentrate on a number of issues listed in the V4 countries. For example, eliminating market entry barriers for startup companies, development of e-commerce through setting simple common rules, for example in the form of guidelines. And we, the public sphere, should develop e-government services to help businesses on all levels. At the last example, to create rules for package delivery, this also should be included in the strategy. As to second question, consumers are still facing many barriers when buying cross-border. The main issue is regulatory fragmentation. In our opinion, harmonized rules covering consumer protection must be adopted. Another encouragement in terms of regulation for businesses and consumers would be a European legal framework for a truly common and widespread availability of legal digital content. This would definitely boost cross-border trade and protect intellectual property rights. Thank you for attention.
Thank you, Tomasz. Slovenia, Zdravko.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to make just some short remarks. I agree that fragmentation of national markets and outdated legislation across Europe represents an inappropriate environment for our industry as well as for our citizens. Based on the national experience, I believe that key success factors for complete the digital single markets are the following. At first, digital infrastructure, access to high-speed broadband is a precondition for uptake of digital service. And as already mentioned by many previous speakers, attention should be paid to legal aspects of doing business across borders, to consumer protection, copyright rules, and data protection. Regarding digital trust, since cybersecurity is one of key factors of trust, in my opinion, it is necessary to rapidly implement network and information security directive and also the IDAS regulation. You should take advantage of Internet and invest in research and development in this area. Internet should be kept neutral and open. And to conclude, Europe must increase the competitiveness of the European ICT industry and must be determined to leverage the opportunities based on the digital technologies. Thank you.
Thank you. Now Cyprus, Himonas.
Thank you, Madam President. First of all, let me thank you for the very well structured and targeted paper that you have drafted. Also, many thanks to our keynote speakers for sharing their thoughts with us. Cyprus does support the adoption of a digital single market strategy that we can all agree with, hopefully by the 6th of May. Being an island with the current digital market, and I'm not saying the word single because it's not single at this point in time, we can neither be competitive when selling nor benefit from cheap prices when buying over the internet because of the high charges to ship products from and to Cyprus. I'd like to respond to your questions. On your first question, I think that our short and medium priorities towards a completion of the DSM market are: number one, to build consumer trust and confidence in online services and establish a pan-European authentication system. We need to remove territorial restrictions. We need to establish an efficient and affordable parcel delivery system, as the current regime hampers e-commerce's growing potential. We need to have interoperable systems and develop standards for emerging technologies. We need to establish the use of electronic signatures, a common regime throughout Europe. We need to adopt common and easy to understand consumer protection rules, have an open and safe internet, and combat digital literacy. You know, 18%, according to the latest scoreboard of Europeans, never use the internet. This is about 100 million Europeans, which is quite a few. With respect to your second question, how should the EU contribute? Well, we all recognize that a competitive digital single market cannot exist without having connected high-speed interoperable broadband networks across all EU regions. Hopefully the Juncker investment plan can help in that direction. Also, we think that the EU should pave the way for the provision of pan-European services and/or the grant of pan-European rights. That's how we're going to move towards a single market. Also, the EU should take the necessary steps to improve the accessibility of electronic procedures of the points of single contact across Europe. That was mentioned by our friends from Eurochambres before. We also need to accelerate the adoption of the data protection legislative package that is being discussed for years now, and it doesn't seem that we are coming close to completing that. And finally, we need to conclude the adoption of the Network and Information Security Directive. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jimones. Wolf Dieter from Germany.
Danke.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm going to speak in German. We have interpretation, thankfully available for us. It was very interesting for me to experience the setting for today's meeting. You have facilitated us having a dialogue looking at the perspective from industry as well as politicians. So that was a very interesting approach to my mind. And it's also a very clear structured discussion paper that you made available to us to prepare for the workshop and our discussions. And you have two questions in that paper, and I'd like to answer those questions from a German government perspective. Your first question was asking about the measures that we're taking on developing a digital single market and what would be required. And on those, perhaps I could look at the need for private investment in developing the broadband network further. Of course, we also need greater efforts in the area of standardization. Industry 4.0, that's a watchword for our program for encouraging investment. And in this way, we can drive Europe as well. Also, digitalization should lead to a networking across sectors, such as energy, health, education, transport, public administration. There's huge potential there for networking. Also, a high level of IT security is important for society and also for the acceptance of such approaches. And we feel we also need this to provide the support for young entrepreneurs, startups, and SMEs. And finally, of course, we also need targeted support for new technologies such as cloud computing, big data, and smart data. So I think those are the approaches that we would like to see happen. And this brings me on to your second question that you put in your paper about the possibilities for strengthening and promoting cross-border trade and fostering demand for cross-border services. Now, there's no easy answer for that. I won't go into specific measures, but I think we need a package of measures that focus on 4 core points. And one of those, an important one, is the trust of companies and customers in digital services. We need to build up that trust, security, in other words. That we need open standards that foster interoperability with other products. And on the basis of such open standards, can we have reliable technologies that can be available? And then a third point, we need to promote these standards beyond Europe. And this way, closed ecosystems that we have at the moment need to be opened up. The problem, as we see it, is that the whole system can be easily controlled if somebody has technological control over part of the system. So in developing standards, we need to see how we can make these systems open and accessible. And finally, security is important. We need secure digital infrastructure, which better protects the identity of our citizens in the internet and also can foster better communication. We have some experience in Germany with ID cards and online ID functions with e-signatures and also a safe form of email, de-email it's called. This is something we need not just in Germany, but I think in cross-border trade across Europe. So those would be our comments and reactions to, as I say, your excellent presentation of what we can do in the future. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Dankeschön, Wolf-Dieter. Axel, Franz.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all the speakers so far for what is being a very interesting debate. If you allow me, I will continue in French, étant donné que la France est un fervent.
Since France promotes cultural diversity, I'll speak my own language, of course. And of course, we're always in favor of protecting our national languages. So, digital issues are one of the priorities of our government. It's something we obviously need to implement in France, but needs to become also a European project. We've been working on infrastructure, education, training. We encourage innovative ecosystems in our country, but what you've asked us here is the European single market. Of course, we can improve harmonization in order to make sure that our companies can grow in Europe and can have access to the whole European market. What do we need to do so that people buy more online? Well, they have to understand how it works. So we need to get rid of also of the language barrier. They also need to be sure that the product will be delivered in reasonable time, at reasonable prices. We need to make sure that they're safe when they pay online. And of course, the French government will support any possible measure that would foster this demand on the market. But if we have a look at the numbers, we realize that cross-border online purchases are on the rise. So they're not just sitting at home waiting for us to decide in Brussels. This is a good sign. So we must not only concentrate on standardization within the single market. for consumers, but we also need to consider other issues. And I will try and explain exactly what I mean. Innovation. This is one of the basic concerns, and it's also about access to funding. And more often than not, they need to go to the Silicon Valley in order to receive funding for the actual marketing of their ideas and their products. This is something which is a problem for innovative companies, and this is where we need to intervene. We need to think also about public and private investment, so that whoever is in London, Paris, Berlin, Stockholm can have appropriate funding which is required to carry out their activities. There's one other issue. Digital platforms, for example. These internet giants offer a number of services based on the value which is created by users of these platforms. And they are extremely powerful on the newer markets. And their practices sometimes are not in line with rules. So what we need is new type of platforms which were created 10 years ago, way before it was known what the economic impact of their activities was. So what we need to do is to define new criteria, loyalty criteria, especially when we talk about using the algorithms and the information which is provided by users of these platforms and the information which is provided to companies. So let us be honest. Sometimes when we talk about regulation, people start to get worried because it sounds a bit like protectionism. I think this is a mistake, of course, especially if we consider what has been done in terms of regulation in Europe. Telecoms regulation, for example, allowed competition among operators, and this has led to lower prices, at least half the price of what is charged on the American continent. And when we talk about regulation, we talk about something which is foreseeable, and companies can enjoy a level playing field. And this tends to facilitate free trade and free competition. So, as you can see, this does not mean protectionism at all. It is rather urgent for European startups to become free of a system which is holding them down. This is also important for consumers who need to have transparent access to digital services. We do not want fragmentation, do we, on the internet, but the risk is actually of fragmentation over the internet if we do not intervene. And we do not want to leave the game in the hands of the big players who will then impose contracts on their users which are unacceptable with abusive measures. So we need to ask ourselves whether we really want to miss the next train of innovation by leaving these big platforms to work as they will. Now, tax issues. That's also an important subject. The OECD has discussed such issues. We are in favor of paying taxes where revenue is made. Is it Google Ireland that creates true value, or is it consumers who use Google in the various countries and by sharing their personal data allow these companies to make the money they make? So this is also something which needs to be discussed, and the French government is definitely in favor of defining the situation. Then industrial strategy is also of basic importance. When I talk about this, I mean standardization, cloud computing, big data, cybersecurity, 5G, all industrial counterparts need to share a standardized position in order to have access to all European countries. And this is something that sometimes does not emerge during negotiations in this particular field. And one extremely important issue, personal data. Let's not stick only to technical issues. We need to understand that we need to reach an agreement on this issue at European level. And our ambition needs to be the protection of personal data. This is our priority. We need to defend, of course, the privacy of all people, but also need to make sure that the market is attractive, because today, unfortunately, it is shown by the news that IT attacks, cyber attacks, are unfortunately a problem for companies, and a better protection on the European continent can also make sure that these companies become more attractive. So this is something that was on the agenda today, and by this I conclude my intervention. Thank you.
Merci, Axel. Lisbeth, Denmark.
Thank you very much, and let me also start by thanking you for inviting us here and arranging this meeting. And thank you also for your very good discussion paper and for the Commission's presentation of their thoughts of this, the new digital single market and what we are supposed to see on the 6th of May. Since we are a lot of speakers around the table, I will keep it very short and just give you 6 highlights of areas where we believe there's something that can be done. And I'll be happy to share with you our thoughts of the actual initiatives that can be taken under these 6 headings when we discuss later on. So let me just say that from a Danish perspective, and the 6 priority areas for us is, as also stated by many others, legislation fit for the digital age, and we need a very well-functioning digital infrastructure. We have to enable smart production and digitized businesses, and as the 4th, we need clear rules to enable digital consumer trust. And 5th, a coherent framework for European e-commerce, also stated by many others, and we need a digitized economy. And let me just, to finalize, to keep it short, say that there's been some issues here also stated by also my UK colleague here, in order to see, do we need special rules, or can we maybe take advantage of the competition rules that we already have in relation to platforms? And we stick to the position also stated by the UK. Let us see if the existing competition rules are good enough to encompass also what is stated by platforms. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisbeth. Maricel, Romania.
Thank you, Madam Minister. The aspects suggested in the President's discussion paper, such as copyright, e-commerce, security, neutrality, consumer protection, fair and open access in a digital environment, and removing the obstacle to interoperability, are all of high importance for the development of the digital single market. Romania fully agrees that standardization is a key element to ensure the communication and interoperability solutions. Digital single market will significantly contribute to the long-term growth and competitiveness of the EU economy, as well as towards improving efficiency and the productivity of the industrial processes and the substantial savings in public spending. Digitalization can be seen as a strategic investment for the EU economy, and financing such investment is a key issue. Therefore, it is crucial to identify the best possible as for its financing. When talking about the completion of the digital single market, we consider important to take into consideration the regional discrepancies in the EU on the citizens' digital competence their access to ITC, especially in the rural or remote areas, as well as the differences between the small and medium enterprises in using ITC and the level 1 demand for ITC. Adequate implementation of services such as e-government in commerce, e-health, e-voicing, and e-procurement should become a priority at the EU level. Also, we see the need of harmonization of consumers protection rules concerning the installation and online registration of companies, including across borders. The implementation of the new public procurement package is challenging, but it will provide modern tools to shift to electronic procurement, introduce innovation and requirements related to environment in new contracts. We consider important enhancing the effectiveness of the regulatory framework, where particular attention should be by creating to the application of the e-compliance, labeling, market surveillance, and electronic declaration of conformity. It is important that the European harmonized regulatory framework keep the pace with technological evolution and the challenges of the 21st century in order to make possible the control of electronic commerce of regulated products sold via internet. Romania is currently in the final stages to adopt the national strategy regarding the digital agenda for the 2020 horizon. The strategy outlines 4 lines of action: increasing efficiency and reducing cost in the public sector by modernizing the administration through the mainstreaming of governance, interoperability, cyber security, clouding, computing, open data, big data, and social media. Investing in ITC development in the education, health, culture, and social sectors. Further development of e-commerce and RDI in ITC. Further integration of the broadband and digital services infrastructures. Thank you for attention.
Thank you. Artur, Portugal.
Thank you, Madam. Well, first of all, I would like to thank the Presidency for this warm welcome in Latvia and for proposing such a relevant debate to allow the Member States to contribute to the future strategy on the digital single market. As you know, digital has become the common term that defines a shift on the way people access to services and products, and a continuous trend with challenges and opportunities at almost all areas of our lives. As agreed in the December European Council, we expect from the Commission an ambitious and comprehensive strategy for the digital single market, focused both on demand and supply sides and encouraging investment in infrastructure, research and development, and training the qualified human resources. Portugal believes that it's important to improve trust and reliability in the digital environment for consumers and businesses, while keeping a balance between consumer protection and economic growth, to remove geo-blocking and improve access to legally bought content to all, to boost the digital empowerment, taking in due account the different stages of individuals in digital uses, For further digital development, the European Union needs to work in close cooperation with the Member States in order to boost network interoperability, tackle regulatory fragmentation in taxation and the cross-border service, promote electronic government and parcels delivery, linking e-commerce to the postal sector. Taking into account the level of industrialization of the Member States, the need to reduce the gap among them, the European Union must review the legal framework for electronic communications, improve conditions for cross-border e-commerce, namely by reforming the European rules on data protection, spread the necessary information to citizens in order to improve consumers' confidence, simplify rules, in particular for SMEs, to do business cross-border online and improve interoperability, introduce the once only principle, facilitate financing for proper infrastructure and high-speed broadband, contribute to broad understanding of digitalization of the industry, boosting the adoption of ICT by industry and consumers, the research, development and innovation, as well as the commercialization of digital innovations. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you. Begoña, Spain.
Muchas gracias a la presidenta.
Thanks to the presidency, and I will use the opportunity to speak my language. I'd like to thank the presidency for organizing this fantastic debate. We've had an opportunity over the 3 days to do that. Europe needs to play a role. It can't forgo digitization and its contribution in areas such as Industry 4.0, as Germany pointed out. Other regions of the world will eat into our companies' operating areas if we sit back and do nothing. I'd like to thank the Commission as well. I think they've done an excellent work in summing up the proposals coming from Member States for the digital single market in their paper. And I'd also like to thank them for looking at the reform of the telecoms markets. There we need to include measures that promote consolidation. I'd also like to thank the Commission for the spectrum measurement measures that will require dialogue with all Member States. I don't want to repeat what others have said already. We would share the opinions of most points made this afternoon, but I'd just like to flag up 3 short-term priorities for Spain for the digital single market. One of the priorities in this field is conclude the negotiations on legislation currently underway and being debated. We need to conclude negotiations on the regulation for the telecom single market, also information networks and protection of personal data. All of those reports are very important for the development of the digital single market, and we need to conclude negotiations as soon as possible. Secondly, we agree with the need to review the general regulatory framework that dates back to 2009. This is an opportunity for everybody in the digital value chain can compete on a level playing field, and also can foster digital platforms. And finally, we feel it's important to look at the challenges for the digital single market in the legislative sphere, not operating on the business-as-usual approach. The digital single market needs fast-track measures, in particular for those areas identified as key areas. And when we look at the negotiations on the regulations for the Juncker plan, so we need all the measures rolled out to ensure that the digital single market is developed and continued and completed ASAP. Thank you.
Thank you, Begoña. Christian, Malta.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let's hope that the anticipated strategy from the Commission, and I thank Commissioner Bieńkowska for her vision, can trust Europe into an era which fosters innovation, and technological development in the Union, whilst promoting its member states to become global leaders and, of course, to market boost our European economy. In order to achieve this, we must carry out a thorough soul-searching exercise in order to find out the real failures and weaknesses that may be diluting the synergies within our digital economy. And in our opinion, one of the most important aspects in this is the intertwining of digital services and the products available through digital means on one hand, with technology and with applications that generate value-added economy on the other. And we firmly believe as a country that service providers in the EU should effectively be able to offer the services while attracting new technologies that make a remarkable difference in the way that business is done to the everyday life of European citizens. And the European Union should be a thriving market for digital services. The distribution of digital products and services sold in the member state should not be encumbered. And there was reference, for example, by territorial rights from basic e-commerce to roaming to content services and e-government services. And we need to ensure that European businesses and citizens have access to digital networks where quality and access are assured, that the integrity of those networks is safeguarded, that efficiency in the use of infrastructure is not fettered by anti-competitive behavior. And I think that we must take innovative steps also to overhaul existing legislation in order to achieve the appropriate regulatory framework that reflects the dynamic nature of today's digital economy. It is important that, and I know it's used very frequently, but a holistic approach is adopted to guarantee that all legislation which is relevant to the digital economy in the EU is analyzed and reviewed concurrently across the board, and so we ensure consistency. It is also important to build on the sound foundations that we have built. The success of an electronic communications framework and national regulatory authorities that have yielded very visible results, and we need to make sure that the expertise that we have built is strengthened under a framework which reflects the principle of subsidiarity. Another important priority for the completion of the digital single market should be to target what skills, and this has also been mentioned before, will be needed. And so we could consider having digital economy and digital agenda as key subjects in entrepreneurship training in primary and secondary schools. And governments, both at local and national level, should also be more sensitive to the developments in digital entrepreneurship and ensure that practices are put in place to digital entrepreneurship so that digital entrepreneurship is encouraged. And Malta trusts that the upcoming digital single market strategy will achieve this. Finally, I conclude with some remarks on the second question. We think that the EU should work more to tackle fragmentation of regulation. Fragmentation creates added burdens, especially for small and medium enterprises, and it implies that businesses have to be familiar with 28 sets of different rules, and we believe that there should be more harmonization of the obligations of traders across the Union, and that SMEs should find an easier environment in which they could maneuver and operate their business. And so far as copyright rules are concerned, we will follow progress made by the EU in its analysis on this subject, as well as any other resulting initiatives which may be taken by the European Union so as to modernize copyright rules. And in this view, the EU should also strive to ensure legal certainty and balance the rights of holders with the right of access of the consumer. Thank you.
Etienne, Luxembourg.
Dear Dana, dear Commissioner, I'm going to be short. I don't want to repeat what has been said by my colleagues, especially I would like to support what my Maltese colleague just said. I think we all agree that we need a digital single market. We all agree that we are lagging behind compared to our competitors. We all agree, as Mr. Abruzini said, that we need to finally combine our action with our vision. And, dear colleagues, everything has been said in this round, again and again. What we need now are clear proposals from the Commission in order to achieve, finally, this digital single market. And please, try to keep it simple. Try to keep it simple, and what we mainly need, at least that's what I think, is a smart combination of harmonization where needed and mutual recognition for the rest. And finally, I think that when we once get an agreement on what to do, the Commission should fight to pass this agreement through without harmful amendments. So that's everything I had to say on this subject. Everything else, I guess, was said many times before. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bulgaria.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Bulgaria supports undertaking of all necessary measures on EU and national level to reveal the full potential of digital technologies for encouraging the EU competitiveness. We share the same position mentioned by my colleagues from UK, Finland and others, that one of the major priorities of the short term is the establishment of suitable regulatory framework for encouraging introduction and broad use of digital technologies in the industry, administration, trade and services. Having clear and simpler rules developed in compliance with smart regulation principles will enable companies and consumers to maximize their online possibilities. Regulatory framework and related activities must be digital by default. New legislation must be designed to be fit for digitalization and to take into account all possible ways to provide digital solutions that could reduce burdens for citizens and business. The active use of digital technologies will support the efforts of Member States for providing e-administrative services and improving business environment. Equally important is to guarantee the security of personal data and payments, consumer protection, and efficient dispute resolutions in online trade. Important element for the development of digital single market for us is the creation of high-speed broadband infrastructure in all Member States, including peripheral areas, as well as interoperability of different digital platforms and services. In the mid-term perspective, the essential element for the development of e-commerce in the EU is the implementation of measures for eliminating burdens and digitalization of procedures for starting up and growing of cross-border business activities, as well as focus on education and lifelong learning. A key precondition for the successful implementation and ensuring sustainability of the measures for digital single market is to guarantee broad involvement and consultation with all Member States and stakeholders in advance. Thank you.
Gerald, Ireland.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and a special thanks for facilitating this engagement among us all and allowing us to give some thoughts to Commissioner Bieńkowska and Vice President Ansip as they build a new strategy for the digital economy. But I think we have to remember that the digital economy has become so large and so important in all our lives because it has developed in a free atmosphere. Innovation, research, and the ability to implement the outcomes and outputs of the digital economy have been, for the most part, beneficial and has benefited from the openness in which those models have been developed and implemented. So some thoughts at a high level, and we'll come back to some more details tomorrow when we discuss the other themes. Before we go down the line of public policy interventions, I think we have to be very clear that these interventions will deliver clear public policy benefits. So some principles any of the regulations that we develop from the digital single market really should be subject to better regulation principles. There should be evidence-based, and we should be absolutely clear in the purpose that we want to achieve by implementing them. And that brings up the importance of very important and clear impact assessments. In developing an innovative European digital economy, we have mentioned in here today that it's global in nature. So developing global standards, developing Europe as the go-to place for innovation and research, and influencing how the digital economy that is developed in Europe will influence the shape of the digital world globally. In developing our proposals, I think we have to have a regard for how the intended and unintended consequences work out. So, for example, if we're introducing regulations, how is this going to work out in our global relationships? For example, e-commerce chapters and research chapters in trade agreements and our international relations with other major economies. Norman's mentioned language, and it just struck me a while back that to increase the benefits of the single market, we put an awful lot of effort and money into issues like trans-European networks. But in the digital world, language itself creates a barrier. An Irish or Finnish person is going to find it very difficult, if not impossible, to access the digital content, the opportunities that might be on Romanian or Bulgarian websites. So public policy intervention might have a very valid role to play in enabling that interaction and commercial consumer purchase or business purchase to take place. And finally, I think it's very important that the consumer has the confidence to engage in online trade, that the contracts and European consumer law is easily understood, and especially that the remedies that will come out of contract and disputes are swiftly and efficiently enabled to be implemented. Thank you.
Thank you. Giovanni, Italy.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you for welcoming also me. Please let me first of all express and convey the greetings of our Undersecretary of State, Giacomelli, who was planned to come, but unfortunately at the last moment he could not. I'm the Italian ambassador in Latvia, so I cannot express thanks for welcome me because I am enjoying the welcoming of Latvia, we're a beautiful country since 3 years. And now, please allow me to go on speaking Italian also. La strategia digitale.
The digital strategy is a fundamental tool to improve the global competitiveness of the EU. Italy, with the TRIO program, already gave its contribution to the definition of a European strategy, a dynamic digital strategy which would also be inclusive, which would guarantee, of course, relaunching the internal market, and is implementing internal national policies to this aim. Digital Venice was an event we organized when the Italian presidency began in July last year, and the Venice Declaration in particular. The Italian government, member of the presidency trio, welcomed the fact that Digital Europe was one of the 3 main priorities of the Latvian presidency. The Italian strategy for digital growth 2014-2020 and the Italian strategy for ultra broadband are our national contribution to pursuing European objectives. Italy believes that Europe needs to impose itself and impose upon others ambitious steps ahead in terms of digitalization of society, so that Europe becomes a global player. In other words, what we need to do is to implement regulatory tools, but also provide funding so that we can improve the digital market with a level playing field for all citizens, and to provide content and service and enjoy content and service wherever you are. Italy, therefore, believes that we need an integrated approach based on 7 actions. The first action for the digital market and investments consists in improving interoperability, giving new value to e-commerce, and harmonization tax laws. Second action, in terms of access to internet, communication networks for services, and this is something which needs to be provided to all European citizens. All European citizens need to have access to broadband by 2020. Third action, in terms of internet governance, improve security and safety over the internet, improve confidence of the public, and provide them with more guarantees. Action number 4, in the creative industry, to support online copyright and audiovisual copyright. Fifth action, research and innovation, to free the innovative potential by giving support to startups, for example. Action number 6, in terms of social advantages of ICT, to improve digital literacy, skills, and inclusion. And 7th and last point concerns e-government, digital infrastructure. We also believe that modernizing the public sector, digital networks, is of paramount importance, and in particular we need European commitments also on other sectors which were mentioned, such as cloud computing and big data. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Poland, Andrzej.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chairman, for inviting us here, and also for setting this subject for discussion. I liked very much the intervention of Etienne. I think that we all agree that we need to do something with digital, environment, digital economy, and regulations related to that. So I'm also calling to the Commission to do their part of job as soon as possible and deliver the proposal that we could work on in the future. I also don't know if mutual recognition, setting new standards, or not doing anything in particular areas are the best way to proceed. But that we will look into when the concrete proposals will be on the table. The only new element I would like to focus your attention is that, in place of 27 small walls that are existing right now between our countries, we should avoid the situation when we are building a great wall around the European Union. We are in the global economy. I think that digital is in particular an open, space, much more open than trade of goods and services, even services. So we should do that, and I'm asking the Commission to, look into that closer. In the process of negotiation of different trade agreements. I'm covering trade policy in Poland. We had in this room 2 days ago discussion on TTIP. We discussed also on the issue of mutual recognition or not, some standards with the United States, and maybe it's a good occasion to look, from that perspective on this process, on process of, shaping the digital market rules by the European Union, but because maybe we can settle a common standards between US and Europe at once. So, and afterwards, because of the weight of the two economies, that would be a global standard. And that is something that is needed for our business to have an access and maybe even a better position, starting position, from the very beginning, not only in Europe, not only in the US, but after in China and growing India and other growing economies. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrei. Kuzic, Croatia.
Dear Madam President, dear colleagues, the extent to which we will develop the full functional digital single market will be fundamental for overall competitiveness, as we can hear today, not only for competitiveness but also for jobs and wealth creation in a future Europe. Without significant investment in digital infrastructure, the rapid digital growth will be jeopardized. Croatia supports new investment plan to prioritize the investment in digital infrastructure. The ultimate goal should be developed connectivity and access in every European region in one not fragmented European digital single market. Consumers should be in the center of digital transformation. Consumers, as we heard today, in different member states already have different experiences considering their participation in digital single market. Examples of so-called digital discrimination are higher prices of parcel shipment services, higher prices of financial transaction, higher credit cards fees for traders in different member states, geo-blocking, different prices of digital content and products in different countries, and so on. These are challenges which do not contribute to an equal development of digital single market and to realization of full functionality and potential of digital single market. We fully support stronger interoperability and standardization framework. We think that it will generate the full potential of digital single market. Development of open and coherent standards should be provided. This is vital for growth of e-invoicing, e-identification, e-signatures, Internet of Things, and cloud computing. EU should take bold steps to create open, what is important, predictable and flexible digital single market with regulatory framework that recognize the potential of new digital economy. We need clear, simple set and properly enforced rules. Member States need to fully support and execute leveling digital and traditional businesses and eliminate market entry barriers. We need to create stronger trust and confidence mechanisms for online consumers, and it is really important to say that consumers must be able to have a better control over their own personal data and should be aware of how it will be used by real sector and the government. We fully agree that data test or digital by default in impact assessment of EU legislation is necessary next step for further development of digital economy. Croatia supports the idea of transformation of 28 fragmented digital markets to one open, flexible and attractive digital single market. Thank you.
Thank you. And then finally Greece, Tortsis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, the host and organizer, for inviting to your beautiful country here and also accommodating us. A lot of things have said by the previous speakers, so I will be very fast. I want to stress that we in Greece, we strongly support the creation of a coherent framework for the realization of the DSM package, which should comprise of concrete action, both regulatory and financial, targeted at promoting the advancement of digital services, enhancement of digital infrastructures, and provision of high-quality digital goods within a broader framework of inclusive growth policies. As said by the others, in our digital area, broadband access should be treated as a social good, like all others good. In Greece, as you all know, we are facing a humanitarian crisis, which puts us in a position to be a good example, exaggerating some stuff in the digital gap. In that respect, it is of the utmost importance our policy regarding the DSM should support poor people and disadvantaged groups so as to tackle their digital exclusion and be part of the digital market. Greece believes that the reduction of administrative and technical burdens on e-commerce should be a first priority, since it forms the basis on which related policies for DSM can be placed onwards. However, prior to setting local priorities for the completion of the DSM, it is also a key importance to analyze and clarify the interconnection of the digital agenda, STM or DSM, and DSM. Our view is for a universal service obligation on broadband as well, as a minimum package of service on broadband, option for social tariff, social residential tariff, in the sense of affordable prices so that everyone has access, even the poor. In addition, we follow open data initiatives. Actually, we have a law in place which is in effect. Accomplishing a digital single market in Europe could serve as an important political objective. In this context, we believe that a holistic approach, as also mentioned by others, is needed, which we suggest being built around three key priorities: modernizing the regulatory framework, promoting the development of broadband infrastructure, strengthening and stimulating demand, so networks without demand are useless, as well as at the same time building trust and security in digital services. The DSM should be also considered under the prism of improving market or correcting market distortion, allowing the harmonization of prices between the different state members, thus being an enabler for lower prices of goods. Now, with regards to cross-border, special care must be taken to setting equal rules of activation and taxing. I was with some others of him this morning to the Single Market Forum, and that was said by a lot of entrepreneurs, etc., that it's huge different regarding taxation, regarding disputes resolvement, regarding package sent. A single legislation could contribute to boosting business on the European level while respecting any member state, specific peculiarities, geography, geopolitics, for example. Online payments is, of course, we consider it a key enabler for promoting DSM. Therefore, we need a pan-European initiative on creating appropriate technical tools and strengthening consumers' trust in online transactions. Completion of the data protection regulation needs to be handled as a European priority, along with the completion of the NIS directive, Network Information Security Directive. This regulatory mix, along with a clear set of regulation in the telecom sector, for example, what will happen to roaming in all levels of services, reduction of broadband development cost, which is initially set from our presidency in Greece, could ease and boost the cross-border transaction as well as other cross-border business activities within the member states. A pan-European policy within the framework of increasing Europe's knowledge-based capital sources is urgently needed. Thank you.
So we have heard all the inputs also from the member states and the parliament, the businesses. I think what we felt the goal is the same, to really foster the digital single market, just the means are different. And at this point I'd like to give the floor to some reflections once again to the Commission, and probably Ms. Biankowska, if you would more elaborate also and give your opinion on the regulation. That was one of the aspects that was discussed probably the most. The business says less is more. Some of the member states also agree with the business. Some would like to have more restrictions. So the floor is yours once again.
Thank you very much. I think there is nothing or not more to add, because everything or every point important for the discussion was touched upon. And I can assure you only that all of those points were discussed, have been discussed during or so far, and will be discussed till 6th of May. So I also personally think that less is more, but I think that the best is balance. So we have to think about the smart harmonization, as Etienne said, and the smart and the mutual recognition amongst this. So I think that the key for the success of this strategy and generally for the single market is to secure access to legitimate content for consumers, so consumers on the right side, and fair and predictable rules for traders. And these are the key words. So consumers and traders must be secured on both sides. And I think that for now, the only thing that could be added is that we have to act very fast, very ambitious, and without any fear. And that with such a support, as I've heard this afternoon, after Commission's proposal, nothing will last more than, I don't know how many, but never 40 years or 17 years or 7 years, as I can really point every piece of legislation that it lasts much too long. There is nothing magic about inventing digital single market. It is existing in the world. If we cannot harmonize ourselves inside Europe, how can we harmonize and think about harmonizing ourselves with United States or China? We cannot harmonize ourselves in any area. So what to talk about, the other global economies? So the task for the Commission now is to present the strategy, but our citizens, they are not waiting for the strategy. They are waiting just for actions and for jobs and to have the really working single market and digital single market in its framework, because it's unity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. That very well goes align my opinion that we all are clear about the needs that are on the table. It's a digital market where everyone can access and carry out online activities across borders safely and securely, and a digital space where we have fair competition regardless of nationality or place of residence, and all this should be underpinned by a clear legal structure. But now we have to come to the action, and it is first of all the clear digital single market strategy coming out on 6th of May this year, and not only the strategy but also the concrete proposals from the Commission. But on the other side, dear Commissioner, you are also right that the strong commitment from the Member States and support for those proposals and adoption of those as soon as possible is also of vital importance, because otherwise we are discussing decently on the actions that have to be taken, of thinking European, but when it comes to the implementation of the measures on ground, then we are still pretty reluctant on removing the barriers, and nevertheless we know all the figures that even the European Parliament has already calculated that if we fully exploit the digital single market potential, then the European Union can gain even 340 billion euros per year. It doesn't really stimulate us to move more actively. The further action really is a matter of getting to the result and success and functioning digital single market. With this, I would like to conclude our working day and working session. But before I conclude, let me remind you that the gala dinner is still ahead of us tonight, and it will start at 7:30 in the very heart of our old city, Riga. And my colleagues have asked me to remind you that it would be important for you to take the invitations, badges, and pins for the security reasons. And also let me remind you that tomorrow we will have 2 working sessions where we have planned the discussions on the digital transformation of industry, and then on the digital entrepreneurship. And we start our work on 9 o'clock in the morning. So I wish you to truly enjoy a magical city, Riga. And with this, I declare this session closed. Thank you very much.